I broke the one rule you're never supposed to break on the long-haul drive through the Nevada desert. My name is Tyler, and this is the story of what happened when we stopped on the Arrowhead Highway for someone who should NT have been there. It started as the most boring drive imaginable. My girlfriend, Leah, was asleep in the passenger seat, her head against the window, and the only thing keeping me company was the monotonous hum of the tires on asphalt and the occasional, desperate signal from a classic rock station. We were cutting across state to visit her family, trying to save on a flight, and the Arrowhead was a notorious, short-cuta, 200-mile stretch of nothing but scrub, cracked earth, and a road so straight it felt like a tunnel into forever. The first unsettling detail was the silence. Not just quiet, but a vacuum. No crickets, no wind, just the engine. The second was the moon. It was full, but it cast a sickly, jaundiced light that made the landscape look like a bleached bone. The third was the sign. WED passed one about 50 miles back, sun-bleached and rusted, with hand-painted letters that read, "No stopping. No matter what you see." ID laughed it off as local color, some quirky attempt to keep tourists from littering or having picnics in the dust. Leah had frowned at it, but said nothing. Now, with the dashboard clock glowing 3:17 a.m., the memory of it felt less like a joke and more like a commandment. The headlights carved a tunnel through the absolute dark, and that's when I saw her. A figure, standing right on the white line at the edge of the road. A woman in a pale, tattered dress, one arm raised, not waving but held straight out, palm facing us like a traffic cop. I jerked the wheel instinctively, my heart slamming against my ribs. "What was that?" Leah mumbled, jolted awake. "Someone on the road," I said, my voice tight. I checked the rear view. The figure was already shrinking, a white smudge in the red glow of my taillights. A woman. She was just standing there. Leah twisted in her seat, peering into the darkness. "We have to go back. Are you insane? It's the middle of nowhere. It could be a trap." "Tyler, she's alone out here. It's freezing. What if her car broke down? What if she's hurt?" Leah's voice was firm, laced with a practical horror at the thought of leaving someone stranded. I thought of the sign, "No stopping. No matter what you see." But under Leah's insistent gaze, the rule felt superstitious and cruel. I was the rational one. I couldn't justify driving away from a person in potential distress because of a creepy sign. So I did the stupid, human thing. I slowed down, made a clumsy U-turn across the empty highway, and drove back. The woman was exactly where I'd seen her, still as a statue, her arms still outstretched. As we pulled up, the headlights fully illuminated her. She was young, maybe early 20s, with dark hair hanging in limp strands. Her dress was a vintage nightgown, dirty and torn at the hem, but her face was blank, not scared, not relieved, just empty. Her eyes were fixed on a point somewhere past our windshield. I rolled down my window a crack. The desert air that rushed in was bone-dry and cold, carrying a scent like ozone and old dust. "Hey, are you okay? Do you need help?" She didn't look at me. Her lips moved, but the sound that came out was a dry whisper, like pages turning. "Hey's coming. You should NT have stopped." "Who's coming?" Leah asked, leaning over me. "Is someone after you?" "Get in, well. Take you to the next town." The woman's head turned, slowly, mechanically, until she was looking directly at Leah. A faint, sad smile touched her lips. "There is no next town. Not for you. Not anymore." Then she pointed a finger. Not at us, but down the road ahead of us, the way WED originally been going. "Drive. Now. And don't look in the mirrors." Before we could respond, she stepped back, melting into the shadows beyond the headlights. Gone. A chill, deeper than the desert cold, locked my spine. Leah grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. "Go. Tyler, just go." I hit the gas. The car lurched forward. We drove in petrified silence for several minutes, the tension so thick I could taste it, coppery and sharp, in the back of my throat. My eyes kept flicking to the rear view, showing only a ribbon of empty road swallowed by night. I began to feel a fool. A strange woman says some creepy things, and I am spooked? This is exactly why those signs exist, for gullible people like me. So tell me, while you're sitting safe wherever you are, what's the one rule you've been told to never break? A curfew? Don't go in the basement? Don't answer the door? Think about that feeling, that specific, ingrained warning. Now imagine ignoring it, and the silence that comes after, when you're waiting for the consequence. That's when Leah screamed. It wasn't a gasp or a shout. It was a raw, primal sound of utter terror. I flinched, the car swerving. What? What is it? She was staring, frozen, at her side mirror. There's someone in the back seat. My blood turned to ice. I jerked my eyes to my rear view mirror. The back seat was empty, a pool of shadow. Leah? There's no one there. You're seeing things. He was right there. A man, sitting right behind me. I saw him in the mirror. She was hyperventilating, tears streaking her face. I reached for her, trying to offer comfort, but my own hand was shaking. A false safety, brittle and thin, settled over us. It was just stress, a trick of the shadows and our fried nerves. I convinced us both. We just needed to get off this road. I drove faster, pushing the car to 80-90 miles an hour. The headlights seemed weaker, struggling against a darkness that now felt solid, hungry. Then came the smell. First, it was a faint, sweet rotten odor, like flowers left too long in a sealed room. Then it shifted, becoming the sharp, metallic tang of blood and wet soil. Leah gagged, covering her nose. "Do you smell that?" I nodded, my knuckles white on the wheel. The radio, which had been static, suddenly blared to life with a burst of frenetic, distorted big band music from the 1940s, scratchy and far too loud. I fumbled, hitting the power button. It clicked off. A second later, it clicked back on by itself, the music now slower, warped, the instruments sounding like dying animals. The digital display didn't show a station number, it just flashed error. The climax hit with a terrifying simplicity. In the flashing, strobing light of the error display, I saw him. Reflected in the windshield, for a single, impossible moment, I saw the silhouette of a man sitting directly behind me. He wore a wide-brimmed hat and a long coat. His head was tilted, as if observing me. I screamed, a short, sharp burst of sound, and slammed on the brakes. The car skidded to a halt, shuddering in the middle of the highway. The music cut off. The smell vanished. The silence returned, heavier than before. Leah was sobbing quietly. I forced myself to turn around, to look at the physical, real back seat of my car. It was empty, but on the leather seat, perfectly centered, was a handprint. It was large, a man's hand, and it was dark and damp, as if pressed there by someone covered in mud or something worse. It hadn't been there before. We both knew it. We didn't speak. I just put the car in drive and started moving again. Slower now, every sense screaming. We saw the glow of a roadside motel about an hour later, a sad little cluster of cabins with a buzzing neon vacancy sign. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. We pulled in, got a room, and locked the door behind us, pushing a chair under the knob. We didn't unpack. We just sat on the edge of the bed, holding each other, waiting for dawn. When the first gray light finally seeped through the curtains, the terrible night began to feel like a bad dream. The fear receded, replaced by exhaustion and a fragile sense of relief. We had stopped. We had survived. We had broken the rule and lived to tell the tale. We decided to get an early start, to put as much distance between us and the Arrowhead Highway as possible. As I went to load our bags into the car, Leah stayed behind to use the restroom. I opened the trunk, and there, nestled between our suitcases, was a single item that hadn't been there before. A wide-brimmed, old-fashioned fedora, stained dark around the brim, and tucked into its band was a small, faded Polaroid. The photo showed a stretch of desert highway at night. In the distance, under that same jaundiced moon, was my car, and standing beside the driver's side door, one hand resting on the roof as if waiting patiently, was the silhouette of a man in a long coat. The photo was dated. The date was tonight's date. Leah called my name from the motel door, asking if I was ready. My voice failed me. I could only stare at the hat at the impossible photo. I heard the motel room door click shut behind her, and then the soft crunch of gravel as she walked toward me. But I also heard, clear as day, from inside the locked and empty car, the distinct, slow creak of leather, as if someone had just settled into the back seat. The story doesn't end when you find the motel. The story doesn't end when the sun comes up. Some things you pick up on the road don't just go away. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you felt that chill, that sense of something watching from the backseat of your own mind, then you understand. Please, give this video a like if it unsettled you. It helps more than you know. Subscribe to the channel for more tales from the shadows, and let me know in the comments, what would you have done if you saw that woman on the road? Would you have stopped? Your stories are the best part of this community. Stay safe out there, and remember some rules exist for a reason.